Okay, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, December 9th, and this is the Cluster API office hours. Cluster API is a subproject of SIG Cluster Lifecycle. Please follow the CNCF Code of Conduct. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand feature, and go ahead and add your name to the attendee list on the agenda. I'll paste the doc in chat. If you don't have edit access, you need to join the SIG Cluster Lifecycle mailing list, which is at the top here. Just look for the turtles. And then if you have any agenda topics, you can add them here under agenda. Okay, I see we have a PSA from Andy. Andy, go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. So I have just some personal news that I'm going to be less involved with Cluster API, unfortunately, going forward. On Monday, I start a new position. I'm still going to be at VMware, so I'm not leaving, but I'm going to be focusing on what we're calling continuous secure delivery. So maybe there's going to be some integrations with Cluster API. I'm going to see if I can make some of that happen, but I will most likely probably file some PRs to move my status to emeritus. It's bittersweet because I think that there's a great community here. I love everybody here. There's a lot of work still to be done. And I basically I'm going to miss everybody here. And I wish you all the best of luck going forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing what great things that you all can collectively accomplish without me. So thank you again.
Wow, this is a surprise for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people too. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say congrats, but also we're going to miss you very much. And thank you so much for all your leadership and contributions in the project. There are a lot of thank yous and miss yous in the chat, so I'm not going to read them all, but if anyone wants to say anything, go ahead.
Hey, this is Mike McCune. I'll just say thanks, Andy. Like all your advice and hand holding and everything has been greatly appreciated personally, and I know like you've made a huge impact on the project. So thanks, and I hope everything goes well on the security side.
Thanks.
Yeah, Mike. You know, if you ever get bored and you want to come back for a PR or two, you're always welcome. All right.
Don't think this means I'll stop bugging you on like, Slack or something.
That's totally fair. I am not going to instantly forget all of my Cluster API knowledge, and I'm always happy to help out.
All right. I don't see any other PSAs listed. Do we have a timeline for the V0312 release? Since you said last week we talked about end of this week. Are we still on track for that?
Yeah, maybe. So like I haven't, maybe someone else could do the release this time, because like if we have to do it this week, otherwise I'm gonna probably schedule for next week. I'm pretty much booked by until Friday afternoon. So but yeah, like we're still waiting for, I think like there's either one or two more PRs that need to be merged or backwarded. But yes, we should probably prioritize those reviews and cut the release soon.
Okay. You know what? You want to pair on it on Monday? That way I can learn from you how you do it, and then next time I can do it. Okay, great. Unless anyone else wants to do it before that, but that sounds good. All right. Let's move on to discussion then. And Marcel, I'm very sorry if I mispronounced your name. You have a topic about multiple versions of CAPI controllers.
Yeah, is my audio fine?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this is from a Slack post I made initially. I'm here from Giant Swarm, and just to give a little bit of background on this, our main concern is that we want to start adopting the upstream controllers, and we have been using upstream CRDs, which are managed by our controllers. So we are compliant with Cluster API, but we've implemented our own controllers and are managing a whole bunch of clusters with those. Over this time, like we've now been working with operators for like nearly 4 years, we have realized that even though the CRD might be stable, so the contract might be stable, changes in the actual operator code can impact the cluster and can also impact basically unexpected results. And because of that, we have become, yeah, maybe you could call it very hesitant or very careful when we do any changes to operators, to the point that we run multiple versions of operators at the same time and then switch CRDs over one by one to the new operator version to have absolute control over which operator reconciles which CRD. And even if the CR, sorry, even if the definition did not change or the contract did not change. So now with us wanting to use upstream controllers more, we've realized that there's currently no mechanism for us to control which basically patch release of a controller is reconciling which CR in a cluster. So from what I understood from the discussions in Slack, it's meant that we would have multiple management clusters and we basically lift and shift the CRs between those management clusters, and each management cluster has a different set of operators, of upstream controllers basically, in a different patch version. Our concern about this at all comes basically from the fact that even though they're just patch versions, there are a lot of changes in the upstream controllers. And with the amount of clusters we're running and with the importance these clusters are having, so we're talking about production clusters that cannot experience any downtime, even during upgrades. So there's no way to just set a window where we do stuff and try stuff out. That makes us a little bit nervous to just do these changes. So what I'm looking for is basically a mechanism to allow us to make these transitions and make them very carefully. For that, my proposal was that I voiced in Slack and that I also made an issue about, to basically allow multiple operators to run in the same management cluster by setting inside the operator or like through a flag, a target label which the operator reconciles. So for example, the upstream controller, let's say the core controller in version 0.3.9 would only, with this flag set, would only reconcile CRs which have a label, some label key, label value 0.3.9. This is the proposal I'm making. First of all, I'm aware that this is not the prettiest proposal, and it's not something where I would say this is like the most amazing solution for this, but it is a solution for this that would unblock us and possibly others. From what I saw now in Slack, there have been other proposals, so I would be very happy to have a discussion. And my first question would be if you understand the concern, why we feel like that we cannot just simply switch the miner of the upstream control or the patch release of the upstream controllers, and what your opinions are.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that was pretty well explained. I know there was some conversations with Fabrizio and Warren on Slack, and they already told you about the plans to move everything to one controller in V1 Alpha 4. So I guess this kind of like puts things back into discussion for sure. I'm going to let Prakash go ahead because he had his hand raised. Go ahead, Prakash.
Yeah, sure. So can you hear me first?
Yeah.
Okay. So anything that has to be done has to be external to the cluster. So I still have thinking that if you are saying that if you are going to do something with respect to a given cluster, will that not be managed by another upper level cluster or upper level management, whatever that switches the two?
Yeah.
Did I make sense?
I don't quite follow.
So what I'm trying to say is you have one cluster API, one operator. Let's say it has multiple operators it is operating on, and then those operators are working with respect to certain custom resource, and that you have some changes which have occurred in the operator, and therefore even though the definitions have not changed, you are expecting that when you try to move the cluster, when you try to move the workloads, you have issues, and therefore you want something within the cluster itself to manage multiple operators. Is that understanding correct?
Yes. So
why would that be possible unless you have something above, over and above it? I mean that a level above the cluster itself to manage that particular thing rather than having within the cluster.
Prakash, I think what Marcel is describing is a solution where you have multiple versions of the controllers, like the CAPI core controllers running in your management cluster, and they have the clusters themselves have some sort of association with the controller. So like either with like a target label or something like that, that allows you to tell the controllers that they should only reconcile these clusters, like these subset of clusters.
So you're talking of subcluster. Can I consider it a sub to the cluster API? Because you need some hierarchy, right? If you want to control a cluster within a cluster types, or an operator within a cluster with multiple operators belonging to different. When you do a select, you say select on label whatever 0.3.9.
yes.
Certain set of operators that goes into one set, another set goes into another. So what would be the grouping then? Is there a grouping you are calling it as?
Okay, so the idea is basically upgrade management or like change management. For example, you have 10 clusters which are managed by the same management cluster. Now you want to change the version of the upstream controllers from one version to another version. And you want to gradually transform or like gradually bring one cluster after the other to the new controller versions. That is basically the goal here. The proposed or the current upstream solution for this is to have multiple management clusters and move basically the cluster CR or the CRs defining the cluster from one management cluster to another management cluster. That is, as far as I know, the
so
current
I see, I got your point. I think
Okay.
it is doable. Only thing is it should be subgrouping, right? So basically you are saying you are grouping certain things and
Yes.
controlling
Hey, folks,
within the same.
sorry to interrupt, but I think we're going too many implementation detail. I would like to take a step back.
Sure.
So sorry if I interrupted again, but I would like to like focus the discussion on the actual problem rather than like presenting a solution. So the problem that Marcel, you presented is like you folks are afraid of behavioral changes inside the controller, not the API changes, because those are the hardest to get. We actually had a conversation internally with the CAPI team at VMware about the same exact things, like how do we get better at it? So while like, you know, the usual reminds like we're in alpha, these things can happen. And this is probably something that we need to fix before going to beta. I would probably suggest to make sure that like we draw a plan of action to add testing that actually make sure that the behavioral changes are stable. Those are hard to do, and they have like we'll need to draw a roadmap out. But the reason that I'm suggesting that is because like while like the solution could could be technically be done, is kind of an anti-pattern do something like that, especially I saw Fabrizio like kind of enumerated like some of the reasons, but one of them that comes to mind is like API changes. If you have multiple controllers running at the same time with different versions, even and they're not patch version different, they're minor version different, you might get into issues. And so far we have not supported that, for example. So the testing is one side of things. Now, like there is other solution that we could allow, maybe a selector or something on the controller as a flag, and maybe that's that's something that we could do separately, but it would not be a supported like kind of behavior that we could do, because we need to focus on the stability side of things rather than like patching our way up to run multiple controllers at the same time. Running multiple controllers has been a problem to maintain that behavior for us. And like definitely, like if you folks are interested in getting more involved in the community, like I'm happy to entertain more ideas. And like we do need more maintainers or reviewers, etc. So those are my 2 cents. I would like to hear from the other maintainers as well, if possible.
Go ahead, Marcel, if you were going to answer.
Yeah, I want to quickly respond to that. 2 points. I can agree that it is kind of an anti-pattern, and I can also agree that it's not easy to do. We do it out of necessity because we couldn't find a better solution. So if someone has like an idea where we have this level of gradual rollout and level of security without immense overhead, then I'm more than happy to pick up any other solution that is available. I'm not hell-bent on like doing this with labels. I'm not hell-bent on implementing this in a specific way. For us, it's just important that we have learned over time that we need this level of stability and we need this level of graduality when upgrading, because when we didn't do it, even though you say we need stability increases, I'm personally of the opinion that as you said, these behavioral changes are even extremely hard to test against, and it's extremely easy to miss one. So we have erred now on the side of being overly cautious, maybe, in order to secure us plus testing against these behavioral decisions. The second point I quickly wanted to make, I'm more than happy, and other people in my company more than happy to work on the implementation of this flag feature, or however we want to do it, or it's decided that it will be done. I understand that it will not be super supported from upstream. And I also understand that it's mostly for us a stepping stone to adopt the upstream controllers. We want to adopt them, we want to use them more, but currently with these issues, we need to find some solution. And I'm open to a myriad of suggestions.
I just have one question, and David, I see your hand. What exactly is stopping you from using the move clusters approach? Like you mentioned it earlier, but what's the blocker with that?
So the main blocker is that we run quite a few clusters per management cluster. So it's not unusual for us to have like 50 to 60 clusters per management cluster. And it's also not unusual for us for these clusters to have very different frame reference. So for example, the production cluster might still be on 1.16, while some of the dev cluster, Kubernetes 1.16, while some of the dev clusters might already be on 1.18. So we have a widespread that can take like 6 months for the last production cluster to actually move, while the smaller like test clusters and so on have already moved forward. If we would go forward with an approach where we have multiple management clusters, from my understanding of how it currently is envisioned to work upstream, it would mean to us that we would basically multiply all the different versions of controllers and would have for each combination potentially a different management cluster. This, of course, the worst case scenario and will likely not happen. What will happen is we will have a lot more management clusters, and we are also running per management cluster our operators as well. So we have like 12 to 15 operators running in each management cluster, which would for us introduce a overhead which would very quickly become hard to manage. We would need more management for our management clusters. So we would need another layer or multiple layers on top, and it would become uneconomical.
Are you saying that you would need a different management cluster per cluster configuration, or like not just per cluster API controller version? Like what's the benefit of having different Kubernetes versions of Kubernetes, like different workload Kubernetes versions on different management clusters?
This would be like an effect. Like, for example, I know that one of the recent patch releases did not support 1.19 Kubernetes, and these effects then build up very quickly, because it's not only that the upstream controllers have like some restrictions, but also our controllers have some restrictions, like some stuff against the I can't come up with examples off the top of my head.
But I guess what I'm saying is you don't have to move all the clusters together. And I think that's what Vince is also saying in the chat is you could have some sort of like safe deployment rollout between clusters where
the problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm very sorry. The problem would be that, yes, we can have some jump forward and then pull the other clusters back, but we don't have that much control over the time frame. So what that could mean is while some clusters stay behind, some jump forward, and the next ones already jump another step forward. And then we have like this basically sliding window situation where we have like the 6-month sliding window, which would introduce a high number of management clusters, at least from what we are seeing currently with our customers and with the use cases we already have. So just for reference, for our controllers, we currently run up to 5 to 6 versions in parallel of different controllers just to support different breaking changes.
Got it. Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead. Andy was muted.
Thanks, Cecile. Marcella, I think that it might be helpful if you're willing and able to either create a GitHub issue or a Google Doc where you describe in detail your deployment setup, your needs around upgrades, your version skewing and whatnot. And maybe through a continued discussion there, we can start to tease out some solutions for you. I think that just saying you need to be able to run multiple versions of the controllers in parallel is maybe not where we'll end up. Maybe we will, but I'd rather talk through the problem statements and try and figure out what wiggle room we might have before just going straight to a solution, if that works for y'all.
Sure, that works perfectly fine for me.
Yeah, thanks. And I think it was definitely useful discussing it here. So thanks for bringing it up. I think we have to do some thinking around that. And your use case is definitely valid. It's just that the solution might not be the best one yet, but we'll see. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add on this topic, or should we move on? I'll take that as a no. All right, so Def, you want to talk about V1 Alpha 4 types?
Yeah, hi. So I'm wondering if we can have an early V1 Alpha 4 release because providers are starting to move to V1 Alpha 4 API types, and we need like images and manifests to use in E2E test. It would be great if we can have a 0.0 release so that we can use the manifest at least, or every provider needs to find a workaround, something like using customize to create the manifest themselves.
Yassine?
So if I recall correctly, historically, what we've been doing before is basically build in through customize the infrastructure components and then updating the image tag through the e-config. So yeah, it can be a little bit challenging plus pinning cluster API to a specific commit. So if we can find something that is easier to consume, +1.
Would a combination of tagged image and customized do the trick? I'm just wondering how maintainable cutting releases would be, because since we're in development mode, we would have to cut them pretty often since things are changing really fast.
Yeah, that's what we did for Alpha 3.
Nadir?
Yeah, so I was thinking of doing something in Cluster API AWS, which was also doing for Cluster API, is that when we build on the main branch, that we also generate the CRD and infrastructure components and drop them in a GCS bucket. And I don't know what it would look like, but there's other projects in Kubernetes that then, when there's a successful CI run, they publish that commit as a known good version, and then dependent projects can consume that, and then therefore we wouldn't need a GitHub release necessarily, and we'd be able to keep all the providers testing against the latest commit in the main branch and not have to manually update their E2E configs. I've got an experiment going in Kappa to do that. Maybe worth trying that out in Cappy as well.
How about a nightly build? So it doesn't have to be like every commit. So we could have like a Vince?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, like for now, we'll probably have to cut the tag, like at least one for cluster cuddle to work, because it will go to the releases today. So if you're using that, like if you want to test that out, like that's necessary. But I actually do love that idea, because yeah, like a nightly build, then we could have cluster cuddle to support to just go pull that stuff out instead of like us doing anything. And we can also automate like pretty much 99% of the release process, which will be awesome.
Also, we probably need to do that at some point anyways to test upstream CAPI with the providers, like the different providers besides Docker.
Yeah, we do publish the container images, we just don't publish everything else, which we should. But yeah, that's a good idea. Let's open an issue to track it though.
What do you think, Sadaf? Would that help solve your problem?
Yes, I'll create an issue and yeah, update according. I think yeah, this is a good idea.
Cool. All right. Anything else anyone wants to talk about? That was the last agenda item. All right. If not, have a great rest of your day, everyone, and we'll see you on Slack. Bye.